All right, so once again, this paint is dry. And what we want to do now is use some faceted edges to kind of create a roundness. I've kind of blocked it in almost like the Asaro head, as if there's absolutely no roundness, as if everything is hard edged, which is a great discipline. Another reason watercolor is really nice. But now, like for instance, what we can do is we can get some halftones in. So I can get some, I don't know, yellowish mixture. I don't even know what color that is, but use a lot of water on the brush so it's a light mixture. And for example, I could like do that, and I can get a bit of a stair-steppy transition. I can do the same thing on planes, like as this maxilla drops a little bit. I'm noticing in the photograph there's a bit of a deeper halftone there. Still light. Halftones, remember, exist in the light, but I can start getting that. And I'll try and link my halftones together as well. This entire plane is getting a bit of halftone. And, you know, just to keep myself consistent, I can go into my shadows as well and just darken the shadows too. The lower lip has, looks like it can use a bit of that form change there. The upper lip is too light. You know, watercolor sometimes dries a bit lighter. It's true of a lot of wet media like gouache or watercolor. When the water evaporates and the pigment is left behind, it can be a bit lighter. So sometimes you have to go back over your stuff just to restate the value. And I will go over the entire, actually not the entire lower lip. It's in shadow on that side completely, but these planes, remember I showed you how the bottom of the lower lip kind of turns under? Therefore it gets a bit of a darker value. I'm going to go for that. And this is just a bit of Van Dyke brown on the palette, which I didn't mention before. And I'm going to get the corner of the mouth with that. And same on the other side. The corners of the mouth are little pockets, little dimples in the face. And if you can put a dark accent there, it really starts popping out the mouth. And I'm going to let watercolor do its thing and bleed a little bit. And that will just help the face feel fleshy. The corners of the mouth are not hard-edged. While I'm here, I can get a little bit of information in the eye. Get the pupil in there, which in this cartoony caricature I think will be nice. And let's get the same on this eye here. And okay, while I am here, let's go a little bit darker with the underside of the head. This is some burnt sienna on the palette as well. And look at that, I can overlap into the light a little bit for some halftone and go darker with the shadow all at once. Wetting down the brush, getting rid of all the paint, and I can just put some water here and just soften this. There's just a slight bit of light hitting the neck. I can get that with just a little bit of water to increase the value as it dries. A little more moisture there will make that value come out a bit lighter. This is where you just really slow down and just put little values in where you think you need them. You can deepen the shadows, which is often the case. For instance, underneath the nose, it's a very deep bit of shadow there. And I want to follow that sad face rhythm, which we looked at in chapter 1. And while I have that value on my brush, I'll just look to see where else I could put it. So, a mixture never goes to waste, so to speak. Using a bit of water to soften out these edges. One value that needs to be darker is the underside of here, just below the lower lip. That absolutely needs to be darker, as that really sets off the platform that the lips sit on. The lips, poke out on the front of that tooth cylinder, and this underplane really helps it come out. Now, I'm going to let's dip into some green for the first time in this painting. And there's a bit of a cast shadow coming from here, coming from the mouth. fact, this whole lower lip here is in shadow. Let's get this. Here we'll put a bit of a halftone in for the chin. And just generally, let's find some darker color for the hair, specifically those chops that come down. And I'll use the chops on this side to really draw the jawline, because this jawline accounts for the silhouette of the head on this side. So it's really got to be drawn well here. And on this side, it's actually the silhouette on this side as well. So I'll make sure that my symmetry is on point. The ear, which I've kind of lost, the pencil drawing is kind of gone now, so I have to re-find where that ear is. There. Then there is hair behind it. There's hair coming out from behind the ear that sets off, that delineates where the ear is versus where the hair is. And then that dark hair merges in value into the sideburns. I've lost the value of the hair. It got lighter when it dried. And it's real important to me that that hair is a dark pattern, especially on this side of the head, where it deepens into shadow. Hair has light and shadow as well, not just flesh. Hair has it too. So this is the shadow side of the hair. So it's going to go quite dark. And the hair falls into shadow in a few spots here. Little shapes of shadow that just make little shapes that I'm trying to design well. I want my shapes to be designed well in 2 dimensions, as though you can like cut them out with a pair of scissors and they would still look like nice shapes. I always think like, flashcards you show little babies, like this is a square, this is a triangle. I try and make my shapes in my painting like that. Not all squares and triangles, but like simple shapes. Something you could show a little baby and say, look at this shape. And they'd say, oh, cool. Or, well, babies can't talk yet, but you get the idea. They would recognize it. It's coming along, coming along. I'm speaking less and less because I feel like I'm doing less and less critical things. Like what I've done so far accounts for like 90% of the design. I can't change my design now. It's too late. Watercolor does not let you do that. Oh, I haven't put in the eyebrows yet. Let's see if I can sneak some of these in with, I'm going to use the direction of the stroke to follow the plane of the brow. Same with this side. Let's use the hair and shadow that's still wet, come out to the eyebrow, just link those together. Make sure, check the rhythms, using my brush to just follow those rhythms. And I'm thinking that the entire brow is just a bit too light, which is fine. And being too light in watercolor is great because I can always go darker. It's being too dark that's the problem. So I can like get a nice little transition here. And you know what? I'll use this as an opportunity to deepen this shadow a little bit, where the underneath the underside of the brow, deepen that. I'll kind of respect the glabella a little bit. I'll leave some of that behind, a bit lighter. But the glabella is not very visible even in the photograph, so I'll take a cue from that. And little chiseled kind of marks are always nice. Like when I say chiseled, it's like, boom, boom, boom. Like I have a hammer, like my brush is a chisel rather than a brush. And I only, I can only make plainer strokes with it. which is why it's so helpful to study the Asaro head. Planes, the anatomy stuff helps too, but everything eventually boils down to planes. So the anatomy is great, and you should learn it. And you should go beyond this class. I talked a little bit about anatomy in this class where I needed it, but obviously there is more to learn. But the anatomy leads you to make plane decisions, as in planar decisions. Plane decisions. That jaw back. And now this relationship between the light of the neck and the dark of the neck is too great. It's too different in value. So what I'll do is I'll just rinse off the brush and just let those pigments blend out and soften out. And do that. And I've completely neglected the suit. So let's get that in. Just with a bit of purple, like red mixed in with blue. And just go whoosh, a few straight lines. Let's get that suit in there like that. Let's get to the other side. Leaving behind a nice line for the collar. And that'll be a nice sort of vignette for the thing. And then the tie is also dark. Let's get that value in there. And the tie just kind of comes down and comes out like that. And we'll let the brush just kind of sort of fade away. While the wash under the neck and the neck and the underside of the jaw is still wet, I'll blend in these the goatee area, the underside of the goatee. Dark accent in the corner of the lips. Middle of the lips. The middle of the lips and the corner of the lips are my favorite places to put the dark accent. I try not to draw a line between the lips. Like I want that delineation made with planes, not lines. Just some subtle things. Let's mix up a very watered down wash and just get the plane that is under the lower lip here that is softly turning into the lower lip. Like it's like the redness of the lower lip stops here, but it's not a hard line. This plane slowly wraps around or softly wraps around. So I will indicate that slight darkening here to make sure the plane is represented, but not so much that it is nearly to the degree of the plane directly under the middle of the lower lip. Also making sure I follow the sad face rhythm of the chin as I do that. Let's go into the nasolabial furrow and add a bit of a halftone there, a bit more of a halftone there, a bit of a halftone up here. This is a very watered down, orangey kind of value. Maybe I'll make it a little more red, a little bit more alizarin crimson there. Let's get a bit more red. Get these halftones right where the wing of the nose ends. I notice there's a slight halftone here, which also delineates the top plane of the nose. So I'll put that in. Remember that thick side plane, I'll get that in, but I want it to be soft. So I'll water down the brush while the wash is wet there, and I'll just soften that out. So pretty much on all sides. I don't want that value to be very harshly stated at all. And there are some shadows on the collar on this side. This collar's in shadow. So let's give it a nice helping of this bluish wash. Let's get that in there. This side of the collar has just a little shape of dark, which I'll try and do in 1 or 2 strokes. Something like that. Maybe a bit of dark accent right in there. Just set off the tie a little bit. Okay, the eyeballs look like 2 headlights. but I specifically saved them to the end. The colors around the eyes are all dry. I'll just get a little bit of that blue and just get just a touch of deepening in their value here. Remember, it's an eyeball, it's a ball, and it goes around. And let's add a little bit of a touch of warmth in there too, especially where it meets the tear duct. Just kind of want to soften this eye so it bleeds into the shadows on this side. In fact, I want to soften the eyes in general, so let's get a wet brush. The nice thing about round brushes, by the way, is the tip, when you wet down the brush, the tip becomes quite sharp. So this is a number 14 round brush, but I can turn it into a number 1 brush, just by wetting it down. You do not need a lot of brushes with watercolor or traditional media in general, because just the way you tilt the brush can often give you like multiple brushes in one. So don't go out to your local art store and spend $200 on brushes. Spend $12 on one brush. I don't really recommend brushes that are too cheap. Although I do own cheap brushes, mostly when I paint outdoors, because I beat the crap out of those things. But in my studio, like this brush probably cost me 20 bucks. It's a very nice brush. Watercolor, studio watercolor, or just, sketching like this in a controlled fashion, I would treat myself to 1 or 2 good brushes, but that's all you need. Nothing more. Watercolor brushes can get expensive. Let's put a bit of a dark value on just the planes of the hair that are just tucking under. And I'll just be very sporadic with this brush here. I just want to indicate the randomness of his hair. It's okay if I squiggle outside the lines, it'll just look like loose hair, which it probably needs a little bit of scruffiness on the outside of his silhouette. The outsides of hair, if you just get a few little strands that break beyond the silhouette, you can really sell texture that way. Whereas inside the hair, like the body of the hair, this area here, you can keep that more one consistent value, just to sell the overall form and solidity of the mass of hair. But it's on the outside, you'll get little variations in the contour and the silhouette. And we are almost done here, folks. I want to lighten up the value of the eye, just with some water. Just kind of coaxing this wash off of the board a little bit. That's something you can do even when the washes are dry. You can go back and just with a wet brush and just dab it like this. You can even touch your paper towel to it and just soak up some of that water, and some pigment will come off with it. You cannot go back to pure white, but you can definitely raise your value an inch or two, and it's fine. I'm just going to get a little bit of some darker little marks for the facial hair, the mustache area. Coming down to meet these, whatever these are. I know there's a word for this that I cannot remember. It's not a soul patch, I know that. But there is a word that I'm sure someone's going to email me about. Okay. Anyway, we are looking good here, folks. We are pretty much done. I'm just going to put a few little touches on this, maybe darken the iris where it comes close to the shadow of the upper eyelid, just to get those values merging a little bit more, make them feel less like islands and more like connected passages. And I have these markers that I showed you earlier. One thing you can do with the marker is go in, I'll use my brown one, like this earth sienna tone, and I'll just kind of go in there and I can chop out maybe some of the nostril here, which is usually not what I look for, nostrils, but in this case we are looking up at the face. We might get a little bit of that nostril being darker. I don't want to overstate it though. What I can do is find the septum, find the wing of the nose here. Now I certainly don't want to turn this into a marker rendering. I don't want the marker to look nearly as dominant in the technique as the watercolor, but just a little bit of hatching around the corners of the mouth can just bring out that dark accent. If it gets lost, I can hatch down the plane of the lip there. What else? I don't want to do too much else, but a little bit of refinement. Maybe just find some lines here in the eye planes. Bring out the eyebrow a touch, maybe just with some directional strokes to indicate the hair growth. Same with up here. I'm certainly not trying to draw any contours or anything, but I can strengthen up, like, you know, this area here is getting a bit lost, so maybe I can strengthen up its contour and say that plane goes that way, the neck goes that way, and just strengthen certain little key directional shifts. This is all about taste, of course, and the way you use the marker will be different. I'm just looking for little, I don't even know, just little things that, you know, I could say like this is the end of the hair right here, and the hair goes in this direction. I can use the direction of my hatching strokes to indicate the direction of the flow of the hair. I can do this with a marker or it's not really a marker, it's a fine liner pen. I can do this with a pen a little bit more apparent. The effect becomes more apparent with a pen than it is with watercolor. It's very hard to show the direction of the stroke with watercolor because the pigment just merges, right? But with a pen, you can say, boom, that direction, this direction, this direction. In fact, I will get my black pen out, which I have right here, and maybe a little bit of outlining or like the contour might be nice on the collar where it feeds itself into the jacket. Try and keep these strokes quick. I'm not much of an inker, but I try and not labor over the strokes. I know that that is what can kill your art. So whatever strokes I put down, just keep them fast and keep them loose. But I think that'll just about wrap it up for this sketch. And again, I think little caricature portraits like this is a great way to test your knowledge of the planes of the head, as well as challenge yourself to come up with a fun design. It can also be a nice little bridge between realistic painting and cartooning. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this demonstration and that it inspires you to try it yourself.